What are the challenges of well planning that we need to overcome? This video is a part of a series about well planning, where previous videos have walked you through what well planning is, how we spend our time planning wells, and how you should invest in well planning. This video drills into the challenges we're facing in light of the digital transformation. The next video will guide you to a new workflow with ProWellPlan, with data management and modern workflows in a pay-per-use SaaS solution. And as always, I promise you a pro tip if you stay all the way to the end. Now, let's get started with challenges in well planning. Starting with data management, most of our data is text and reported numbers from daily operations. The data is primarily made to convey what happened just now. Combined with the end of well reports, section reports, incident reports, and other documents generated during or shortly after operations, this makes up the bulk of the information available as experience transfer from the well. We can also find and make use of some log data from the operations, such as ECD and hook load data, but often this data is unavailable or discretized away from its original format. Combined with the reports generated during or shortly after operations, this makes up the bulk of the information available as experience transfer from the well. Planning data can be found in documents and spreadsheets, but the main purpose of data is to document decisions and permits, so very little details from planning is available. I'll get back to this in the well planning part of this video. Quality assurance of well data is very complex. Reporting systems suffer from manual input, and the reports are not compared to plans. Since most of the data we are gathering are perceptions of what is happening in operations, this has a tendency to change as more data is being compiled. Well reviews are done all the time, but with personal experiences. This makes sense in the manual workflow, because when you want your team to make a decision, they need to understand the background data. And if you use experiences from the previous wells, your team understands the underlying data. It's part of the collective memory. On the contrary, if you do a thorough well review based on data, you take the risk of finding arguments which are harder to accept by your team. They could be challenging your team's best practices, and maybe you are bringing up details which makes the rest of the team uncomfortable. With the so many times before mentioned poor data quality, you know you're in an uphill battle to convince your team you have made valuable discovery. A summary for well reviews. This important task is frequently suffering in quality due to poor data, little reward for in-depth analysis, and a collective memory of the last 3 to 5 wells. Well reviews end up as static documents and checklist items instead of being used actively for decision making. We have lots of disconnected data sets, meaning the data used for time estimation are not the same as used for cost estimation, even though they both use a count of section and section lengths. The data is entered multiple times, and they are not updated when they change in another workflow. The goal of planning is to get approvals and permits, and to plan safe and efficient execution of well operations. Unfortunately, the detailed planning suffers from a focus on permits and approvals, leaving all the operational decisions to last minute. We're creating lots of data in well planning, but the plans suffer from detached datasets and slow or impossible iterations. With a manual workflow, you can create worst case and best case scenarios in specialist applications. And then you do your own spreadsheets and studies for what is not covered by software. And then you create summaries and context as the official data in a new spreadsheet or a document. The problem with summarizing data in a report or a spreadsheet is that you can't go back and revisit the assumptions you made. And you can't reuse your plans because there's no data to document the assumptions. And what happens when you want to iterate? Then it is up to the planner to verify if the new scenario is within the boundaries of the previous iteration. And let's talk more about iterations. There are many connected tasks, and for every new data or requirement that enters the project, you need to iterate to strengthen your plan. All tasks depend on pressures, geology, sections, operations, equipment time, cost, and engineering validations. And all of these are rather complex data sets. When we move into operations, we need detailed plans and contingencies to avoid costly decision making on rig time. What if this happens? And what if that doesn't apply? Scenarios are being screened and evaluated in the planning phase, but these details are lost if they're not part of a primary design. Since the plans were made without detailed operations, design decisions are made on the fly in operations, based on the outcome of the previous operations. The well plan is no longer relevant, and you need to remake the plan while the rig is waiting. And that is when supervised are called in the middle of the night to make decisions. Most engineering time is spent on reporting and documentation. Well planners have to create reports for decision making, for partners, for internal stakeholders, for project members, for service providers, for handovers, and on top of this, someone asks for a review of new technology or an experience report. Brilliant engineers are mostly secretaries who create PowerPoints and spreadsheets or reports report in data systems. With the reporting being disconnected from the data sources, the discussions are at very general levels. Sharing a detailed alternate time estimate with contingency operations requires a week of preparation, but having a chat about the headlines of the time estimate can be done very easily. And I'm sure you can relate to this as a planner, that you typically end up with defending your decision more than inviting to discussions. That is because the workflow doesn't allow you to share your work in detail as you go. You can only share the summaries. In operations, we don't compare plan to actual. Instead, we write down what we did, 15 minutes at a time. We have talked a lot about plans and data, and the operations is where they should be playing out and creating value by offering alternate plans, risk reviews, and carry learnings from the planning into operations. So instead of verifying that we followed or deviated from the plan, we're trying to describe what we just did, as if there was no plan. All this reporting is keeping people busy, but it is stealing time that should be spent on reducing risk and optimizing performance. Since we don't make quality plans, we have to compensate with reporting. That concludes this video on challenges in well planning. We have touched on experience transfer, disconnected legacy systems, iterations, reporting, plans which are shredded at the operation start, and reporting, and even more reporting. I didn't mention the risk matrix, because I saved that for a pro tip coming up soon. The next video will guide you to a new workflow with ProWell Plan, with data management and modern workflows in a pay-per-use SaaS solution. I promised you a pro tip. The risk matrix is the most important decision document in well planning and operations. And it's perfectly manual. It's a spreadsheet. If you want something to happen, make sure the risk of not doing what you want is red. And if the risk is red, but you still want this, split it into 2 yellow tasks and space them out a bit in the risk spreadsheet. It will be too much work to challenge the risk matrix, and you will have it your way. Thanks for watching.